Good evening and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals virtual meeting. You're all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it is our job to try to help you achieve the relief you're requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the variance. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. After your case is announced by Mr. Donadio, the moderator will connect you to the meeting so you can present your case to the board. Once you have completed your presentation, if anyone on the board has any questions, they will be asked. Then any interested party who would like to speak on your case will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to any questions and concerns, after which the case will be closed. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. You can contact the planning department after 12 p.m. tomorrow for the status of your case. We do have one adjournment. The adjournment is case number 18485, Marcelo Garcia. This case has been adjourned to November 9th. This is the 4th time this case has been adjourned. It's the 4th and final time for the adjournment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from the first case on the agenda this evening.
Fine.
Ready to go, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Okay. The first case on the agenda is case number 18584, Long River, 4 Main Street, Kings Park. The location of the property, the southwest corner of Main Street, New York State Route 25A, and Indian Head Road, County Road 14. The property is zoned C. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet to 5 feet, to reduce the side yard setback from 5 foot to 1 foot for a covered patio, to reduce the required parking from 68 spaces to 0, to permit outdoor dining to be covered.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Let me just, Mr. Chairman, if anybody would like to speak, if the applicant, please raise your hand.
No. Is the applicant here?
Hang on one second, Mr. Chairman. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. I believe it's last name Rodriguez.
Yeah, Zacharias Rodriguez.
There you go.
All right. Are you going to present your case or is someone going to be doing it for you?
Well, we're going to be presenting our case. Yes, so we submit the plans and.
You're going to be presenting your own case.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please, sir?
Zacharias Rodriguez, 4 Main Street, Kings Park.
Thank you. You can go ahead and tell us why you're here tonight.
We are here tonight. We we like to submit the application to cover the front patio because we had it like a temporary tent on the back, on the parking lot, on the train station. But we know eventually we got to take it out of there. So we figure like the front patio will be the best way to do outdoor seating.
All right, anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, that's pretty much what we propose.
We looked at this application on Friday. What's going to happen with all those electrical wires running across there?
That will go under, and I also spoke to the electrician.
They're going to go.
It
Excuse
could-
me. They're going to go underneath the overhead. The cover?
Yes, and also the overhead wires could be raised a couple of feet. And the cover will be under the overhead wires.
Okay. Do you know the height?
The overhead wire is about 17 feet.
Okay.
And the way the roof is pitching is gonna clear like, from the wires to the roof, is gonna clear like 7-8 feet between the wires and the roof, because the highest point is not directly under the wires. Actually, where the wires are, it become like a lower point.
Okay, fine. Is there anyone on the board?
Turn it on for us, March.
Is there anyone on the board that has any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. Again, if anybody would like to speak on this application, please use the raise your hand function.
No one, Peter?
No names are coming up, Mr. Chairman.
All right. This is the last chance to speak on this application. Otherwise, it's going to be closed. All right. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Like total carb and the tablespoon is like 3.
This is Matt
That's
Devon.
nice.
If I may interrupt for a moment, Darlene is trying to get on.
It's main way cut.
It's okay.
This is tomato cover.
I see her on, Matt. I think she's just muted.
All right, I'll tell her to unmute. Okay.
Get the tomato.
I'm here. I can't hear anything you guys are saying.
Oh, we can hear you. That's odd.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in the chats because that's the only way I guess I can communicate. I don't understand.
All right. We're going to move on to the next case. Is Tony back?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay.
Okay,
Hi, please.
all righty.
Just not making a record of any of this.
Okay. The next case on the agenda, case number 18587, Michael Balagula, 69 Churchill Lane, Smithtown. The location of the property, the northeast corner of Churchill Lane and Bayberry Lane. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 15 feet for an existing side 456 square foot wood deck. to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 6 feet for an existing 100 square foot wood trellis, to decrease the minimum distance to a rear lot line from 8 feet to 6 feet for an existing 180 square foot wood shed with roof over.
Good evening,
Thank you.
Chair-
Can I have the applicant, please?
Chairman, good evening. Christina Fry on behalf of Michael Balgula, an attorney with offices at 7 Pine Ridge Drive, Smithtown, New York, 11787. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you. We're here before the board today for what is considered the side yard of this corner property. It has been used by the homeowner for over 30 years as his rear yard. And we have a deck that's half a foot shy of the required setback. It's 15 feet instead of 16 feet, or really from the survey, 15.5 feet. We also have a roof over shed, a piece that's attached to the shed in the rear yard where he stores wood under it. That corner is 6 feet from the property line instead of the required setback of, I believe was 11 feet. And additionally, we have a roof over pergola. That pergola is actually it has vines of grapes that they've been growing for the last 30 years. It's very well sheltered and landscaped. The side yard is very heavily landscaped with evergreens so that the deck is not visible to the neighbors on Bayberry. The shed in the rear yard is also only visible from the street. It's located approximately 100 feet off the street. That pergola that you just showed is the one that has the grapes growing on it. That at this time of year that I took the photo, there were no grapes, but right now it's heavily landscaped with grapes on it. The shed in the rear yard that you're showing now, that one piece for the wood shed is the one that is in violation of the setback. It's 6 feet off the property line in the corner where 8 feet is required. The side yard setbacks are not really visible from any neighboring properties other than the shed, which is somewhat visible from 100 feet away on the street side. The property's on a corner. The side yard has been the rear yard, the rear of the dwelling for the occupants, where their kitchen is off the deck and where they've enjoyed meals for a number of years. The deck is probably about 10 years old at this point. Construction materials are those typical to the environment. They don't create any runoff issues. They're obviously planked decking, and the water runoff is not significantly disturbed. And while the difficulty was created by this homeowner, it certainly is not a determinative factor here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Oh, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anybody asking to speak on this. Nobody has their hand up. If you would like to speak and you're able to unmute yourself, please do so. We'll give it a minute. I don't see anybody, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Peter. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18588, James Darity, 10 Treetop Terrace, Smithtown. The location of the property, the southeast corner of Treetop Terrace and Landing Meadow Road. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum front yard on Landing Meadow Road from 60 feet to 20 feet for a proposed propane gas-fired 24 kilowatt generator. Excuse me.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Hey, how you doing? My name's James Doherty.
All right, James, you gonna present the case yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go right ahead. Excuse me, can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, yeah, James Doherty, 10 Treetop Terrace, Smithtown, New York.
Okay, go ahead.
My wife and I wanted to install a generator for obvious reasons, and we're going through this process because we learned that because we're at a corner lot, I guess you guys consider what we use as a rear yard is really a front yard off of Landing Meadow. So we wanted to go to the planning board to get permission to install a generator behind our already zoned shed that's shown in black and white on the survey we provided.
All right,
We picked this place because it's the furthest from all the neighbors. You know, we're new to Smithtown, so we wanted to pick the place that's furthest from everybody, people on Landing, people on Treetop, and people on Stony Hill. It's super overgrown, like you can see, and you know, we're gonna have to clear out some of the trees, and we even ordered we're ordering a submersible propane tank. So it's a very small generator structure. I think it stands like 38 inches off the ground. And that's basically it.
okay. Thank you, James. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anyone.
All right, fine. Excuse me, whoever's talking,
Yeah,
please.
somebody needs to mute themselves.
Yeah. Should I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just wait, I go and follow up with the planning board tomorrow then?
After 12 PM, you can call.
Excellent. Thank you. And I can sign off now?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, everybody.
Good. The next application on the agenda, 18589, Edward Simichek, 36 Brookfield Road, Fort Salonga. The location of the property, the east side of Brookfield Road, 1,081 feet south of Marion's Lane. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce minimum side yard from 24 feet to 10 feet, to reduce the total side yards from 60 feet to 33 feet for a proposed 517 square foot first floor addition, 300 square foot detached front entry garage, and 210 square foot attached carport.
Okay. Can I have the applicant, please?
Here I am, and this is my wife, Janet.
Okay, Edward. Did you state are you going to present your case?
Yes,
Okay. You just state your name and address for the record, please.
Edward Simisich, 36 Brookfield Road, Fort Salonga, New York, 11768.
All right, thank you. You can start now.
We are looking to build a garage with a carport 10 feet from the property line. We need a variance because in order to do it 10 feet from the property line, we will have to go much further back to the back of the property, which would place the garage about 100 feet away from the existing house, which would be very unpractical and not functional. That's basically it. We just need to bring it closer to the house.
Okay, so you're going to build a garage, and then attached to the garage, you're going to have another carport.
Yes, it's all under one combined roof, right there in the middle.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in excuse me, anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Anybody? No? Can I have a motion? to Close the application, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Ed. Good night.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18590, Keith Gerstenhaber, 17 Mahannes Way, Kings Park. The location of the property is the north side of Mahannes Way, 230 feet west of Manitou Trail. The property is zoned R6. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the distance from the rear of the dwelling unit from 10 feet to 12 feet, to reduce the distance from any lot line from 3 feet to 0 for a proposed 12 foot by 12 foot, 12 foot by 12 foot Trex deck, 24 inches above grade.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Yes, hi, I'm Keith Gerstenhaber. Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Keith. Can you just state your name and address for the record? Are you going to present your case, sir?
Yes, I will present the case.
Okay, fine. Can you just state your name and address, please, for the record?
Keith Gerstenhaber, 17 Mahannes Way, Kings Park, New York, 11754.
Thank you.
When we moved in, we were made aware that we were told by the management company and the HOA that we could increase the size of our deck 2 feet out with permission. In other words, we would need to get a variance. So since the deck was pretty much in raw form, we felt since we were going to do it from scratch, we would ask for permission to do the extra 2 feet. As far as the 0, that's because we're in a townhouse, so we're right next to our neighbor as far as the distance from the neighbor, so that had to be changed.
Right.
And that's basically it. We just want to add the 2 feet to the deck.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No. Planning, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anybody wishing to speak.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night now.
The next application is case number 18591, Becky Giuliano, 3 Derby Place, Kings Park. The location of the property is the northeast side of Derby Place, south of Ashland Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 44 feet for an existing 218 square foot second story rear deck, to permit an existing 6-foot PVC fence to be 0 feet to the top of an existing 2-foot retaining wall for a combined height of fence and wall of 8 feet, to decrease the minimum setback of an existing 2-foot wood retaining wall from the rear property line from 3 feet to 1 foot.
Thank you. Can I have the applicant, please?
Good evening, all. My name is Becky Giuliano, and I reside at 3 Derby Place, Kings Park, New York, 1754.
You're going to present your own case today?
Yes, I will.
Okay, great. Go right ahead.
So I'm seeking a variance for the second story deck in addition to the retaining wall, and the fence is within the property.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell us?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Oh, thank you.
Planning, any questions?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing anybody that would wish to be heard from.
All right, thank you, Peter. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Good night now.
Thank you. Good night.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18592, Anthony Falsita, 29 Bowman Lane, Kings Park. The location of the property is the north side of Bowman Lane, 396 feet west of Shire Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum height of a wall and fence from 6 feet to 10 feet, to reduce the setback of a 4-foot fence to the top of a 6-foot retaining wall from 4 feet to 0, to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet to 0 on Lawrence Road, a paper road, from the lot line for a proposed 6-foot high retaining wall with a 4-foot fence on top, to reduce the minimum front yard on Lawrence Road from 40 feet to 19 feet for a proposed 16-foot by 32-foot in-ground swimming pool.
Could I have the applicant, please?
Hi, good evening. Christina Bravin, Moreno Expediting.
Okay. You submitted all the necessary paperwork?
Yes, we have.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Go right ahead now.
Thank you. On the line with me should also be the owners, in addition to representatives from Long Island Pool and Patio, if you have any questions regarding construction. So they are also with me. I don't know if they've raised their hands, but they should be present.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So this application is in connection to proposed in-ground pool, 16-foot by 32-foot. And we're requesting permission to increase the maximum height of a wall, which is going to be a retaining wall, and a fence combination from 6 feet to 10 foot. We'd like to have permission to allow a 4-foot fence on top of a 6-foot wall, and to reduce the front yard setback on Lawrence Road, which is a paper road, from the lot line from 10 feet to 0 feet for a proposed 6-foot high block retaining wall and the 4-foot chain link fence. We're also requesting to reduce the minimum front yard required from Lawrence Road from 40 feet to 19 feet and to permit the accessory structure, which is the pool, in the required front yard. So this parcel is considered a through lot as they have the undeveloped paper road behind them. So Lawrence Road technically becomes another frontage. So all these proposals are in connection to the in-ground pool in the rear yard, which will be set back 19 foot off that northern property line along the paper road. They're going to put the pool within the backyard that is presently sunken down. And so the proposal is to build the retaining wall, level off the entire property, and then install the pool within the current lot line. So beyond the paper road is the site center, which is wooded area, so it wouldn't have any negative or adverse impact to the property line most affected. The abutting neighbors both have pools, so we feel it's in keeping with the neighborhood. The neighbor to the east has a back portion elevated to the level off of their backyard, which is a similar proposal. So you can see in that photograph where it's very heavily vegetated, it's very difficult to actually see the neighbors, but one, you can see a pool that is already installed, and that is the neighbor to the west. Their pool is sunken down, and our proposal is to raise up that rear yard so that it'll be level with the rest of the yard.
All right, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see anyone. The applicant and the pool company are here, but, you know, they do not look like they want to be speaking.
I don't think there's any questions for them.
Well, no, I'm here. This is Michael Dominici. I'm the owner. If anybody has a question, I'd be more than glad to answer it.
I understand that, but no one has a question for you, Michael.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk.
No, thank you.
Okay.
There's nobody else, Mr. Chairman.
No one else? Okay, can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I have somebody, it says Saul, as a guest who has his hand up.
For this last one?
I'm not sure what it's for. It just has his hand.
Saul is part of Long Island Pool and Patio. He was on the line in the event
Okay.
you had any questions regarding structural, or construction for the
Yep, he
wall.
just put his hand down.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, you're
thank
good.
you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18593, Michael Beeran, 10 Verbena Drive, Comac. The location of the property, the south side of Verbena Drive, 331 feet west of Hyacinth Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to permit a second one-family dwelling for a 52-foot by 14-foot 4-inch temporary living trailer on an R10 lot.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Hello, sir.
Hello,
Hello?
Michael?
Yes, hi. How are you? I don't know if this is actually working. I'm assuming you
Yeah.
can hear me.
I can hear you. Are you going to present the case yourself, sir?
Yes,
Okay, just state your name and address for the record, Michael.
Michael Byron, 10 Verbena Drive, Comac, New York, 11725.
All right, go ahead now.
This variance is tied to a building permit, which I already received. I'm doing a one-story extension in the back of my house, and it's a major renovation to the whole house. I'm redoing my heat, my electric, my plumbing. I'm moving a bathroom. I'm moving stairs. It's a major renovation. The house will not be livable for me to live in it while the construction's going on. I have a kid in the school district. I also have an animal. We looked into hotels in Comac. Nobody will accept an animal. We looked into renting an apartment. We cannot find one without signing a year lease agreement. This will definitely be much less than a year. I do not have any place to stay. I don't have any family within town or within a couple of towns over. So this is one of the mobile homes that are on lawns that are in front of houses when people have fires and floods and stuff. And I was hoping to try to put one of those in front of my house for a couple of months.
Okay. How long do you think it's going to be there, Michael?
It better not be more than 4 months. But
All right, so if we allow it for 6 months, you should be okay then, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No questions.
Thank you.
No. Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience that lets be heard on this application?
I don't see anyone, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, fine. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second. Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Michael, and good night.
Thank you very much.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18562, Christina DiNapoli, 7 Long Meadow Road, Comac. The location of the property, the west side of Long Meadow Road, 257 feet north of Fleetwood Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 14 feet for a proposed 477 square foot roof over patio addition with an attached natural gas fireplace. To reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 49 feet for a proposed 113 square foot attached trellis.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Christina Fry, an attorney with offices at 7 Pine Ridge Drive, Smithtown, New York, on behalf of Christina Di Napoli. This case was actually on the September 14th calendar when I made the presentation to find that we had a defect in the notice, so it was rescheduled for this evening.
Right.
I am this is a proposed structure of 25 by 19 overall roof over patio with an attached fireplace and attached trellis. We're looking for a 14-foot setback on the side yard and a 49-foot in the rear yard to accommodate the attached trellis. I have modified the initial application when I was before the board on September 14th. I was asked whether this was going to be wood burning or natural gas. It was wood burning at that time. We have modified our application for a natural gas burning fireplace to assist with the particulate emissions that would have come from a wood burning fireplace. The ridge of the 19 by 25 overall roof over patio would be 15 foot high, and the top of the proposed chimney would be 17 feet high at the highest. We also submitted this evening the Napoleon natural gas model outdoor fireplace as our proposed fireplace device. The fireplace itself would be masonry, 7 foot 6 inches wide, 7.5 feet wide, 2 feet 2 inches deep. Again, the ridge height 15 feet, chimney height 17 feet. The structure would be confined to the rear of the property, rear of the dwelling, not noticeable to passerbys in the front, but certainly noticeable to the adjacent neighbor. There is some evergreen coverage on that side. The request is 1 to 2 feet, not noticeable as a change to the setback requirements, not significantly noticeable. The 2-foot deviation is required to keep the roof in line with the structure and also to give a slight setback to the fireplace. The runoff of stormwater will be confined to dry wells on the property. And of course, in this case, the subject structure is not built, so therefore there is no hardship or difficulty created by this applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thanks. Planning?
Just one question. Is the fireplace ventless?
That's a good question. I know I submitted that's what I submitted. I don't have an answer to that question. I can certainly get an answer to the board as early as tomorrow if you like.
Okay, I think they would probably want that information.
Okay. So do you want me to leave this open then, Liz?
I don't really think that's necessary, Mr. Chairman. It doesn't change the scope of the application.
Right. It'll just be a yes or a no.
Right.
Okay. All right, fine. Can I have a vote? Excuse me, is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, no one has their hand up.
I just want to comment. I did look up the specs in more detail. It does say that the fireplace is ventless.
Okay.
So just to be clear, if it's ventless, the chimney is just for aesthetics. It's not actually going to be functional.
I would imagine that it would not be functional if it's a ventless fireplace, but I did look up the specs and it does say ventless. Maybe it would be wise just to give a call in tomorrow, nevertheless.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
I don't see anything, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18586, Safeguard Properties 2 LLC. 1036A Jericho Turnpike, Smithtown. The location of the property, the south side of Jericho Turnpike, 600 feet west of Winston Drive. The property is split zoned WSI and R21. The applicant is requesting variances to permit a building to exceed the maximum gross floor area ratio, to permit storage unit doors to be visible from a public street, to increase the maximum FAR from 50% to 60%, to reduce the required parking from 100 stalls to 13 stalls, to reduce the size of truck loading stalls, to reduce the front yard parking setback from 25 feet to 8 feet, to permit construction within 10 feet of slopes greater than 25%, to allow the alteration of environmentally sensitive lands, steep slopes greater than 15%, to reduce the setback to the residential district from 50 feet to 2 feet, to eliminate the required buffer screen and fence to the residential district, to increase the number of wall signs from 1 to 3, to increase the height of a wall sign from 15 feet to 21 feet and to 25 feet.
Could I have the applicant, please?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Mr. Chairman, members of the Town of Smithtown Board of Zoning Appeals, my name is Keith Brown of Brown Altman Bonilla. My address is 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747. Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation here tonight. I'm here with respect to Safeguard's application for parking, building, lot, and sign variances for the proposed new construction of a mini storage warehouse on a parcel located at 1036A West Jericho Turnpike in Smithtown, New York. Matter of housekeeping, all mailings and postings for this hearing were performed in accordance with the town code, and the affidavit of posting, mailing, along with all green and white postmarked receipts stamped from the U.S. Post Office and return green cards were submitted to the planning department prior to this meeting as required by the town code. By way of background, the property is located on the south side of West Jericho Turnpike, approximately 603 feet west of the intersection of West Jericho Turnpike and Winston Drive, as you can see on the aerial. It's split zoned in the WSI wholesale and service industry on the front portion of the property, with the rear of the property zoned in the R21 residential district. The uses of the neighboring parcels up and down Jericho Turnpike in the area are in substantial harmony with the mini storage warehouse use. To the north of the property, there's a fence contractor, Duke of Iron, Inc., along with the strip mall and the Casa Louis restaurant. On the east side of the property are professional offices, including a family dentist office, followed by a transmission shop and other commercial uses. And to the west of the property, there is a law office, a converted office building, 7 Gables power equipment, and an office building, followed by another transmission shop and other commercial uses. Safeguard proposes to add value to the area by improving this vacant land with the addition of a brand new state-of-the-art mini storage warehouse. The variances requested herein are due primarily to the existence of the lot shape and configuration, the steep slopes, the split zone nature of the parcel, and the lot's topography, which runs from Jericho Turnpike up the steep slope to the southern boundary line. We respectfully request that the board grant the following variances as follows. And Mr. Chairman, if you beg my indulgence, I'm just going to go through each and every one of the variances. The first variance is pursuant to Town Code 322-30.1 sub B, gross floor area, 50% of lot area, maximum 59% proposed, I should say. The basis for this variance is that the property is split zone WSI and R21, and it should be noted that we're not building in the R21 zone at all. The town code requires that the calculation of the gross floor area ratio exclude the R21 zoned area and the environmentally sensitive lands. In removing those portions of the land from the calculation, the lot area is significantly decreased from the original 56,008 square feet to 41,773 square feet. So while the town code requirement is 50% FAR in the WSI district, the FAR calculation using the entire lot is 59.9. Just the WSI portion, that number drops to 55%, and just the buildable area of the WSI minus the steep slope, that number drops down to 44.4%. Therefore, the gross floor area would be compliant if you calculate the FAR by virtue of the buildable portion of the lot. Moreover, this board approved a similar variance for gross floor area increase for the Smithtown self-storage from 25% to 30% on December 12th of 2006. The second such variance requested tonight is Town Code Section 322-30.1 sub D, as in dog, visibility of the storage unit door. It requires that no storage unit shall be visible from any public street, 2 loading docks, and a building office door to be visible from Jericho Turnpike. So we would submit, Mr. Chairman, that the storage unit doors are really not visible from the street. The only doors visible from the street are the garage doors in the front, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there. It's drawing A2-01. And if Mr. Donadio would be kind enough maybe to point it out with his cursor, I could show you. Those are the 2 garage doors. They're not actually loading dock doors. So these garage doors are used for customers to access the 2 elevators inside. Also, this board granted the same variance for the Safeguard properties, the same applicant for the St. James location, many storage doors of the same type, the garage doors, to be visible from the street, most recently on January 15th of the year. The third variance, Town Code Section 322-9 sub B, maximum FAR. I basically reviewed, this is the same argument as the first one, that the 2 variances are requiring are basically the same. A similar variance was also granted in January of this year to Safeguard for the mini storage warehouse in St. James. That FAR increase was from 50% to 152%, almost triple. And we submit that the variance requested herein is only 9% and substantially less and will not have an impact on the surrounding area. The next variance, Town Code Section 322-19E, is an elephant, environmentally sensitive land. A variance is requested to permit construction within 10 feet of the slopes greater than 25%. We submit that Safeguard has constructed on steep slopes in another similar location using the back wall of the building as a retaining wall to support the land. And a similar variance was granted on November 29th of 2006 for the previous applicant on this particular location, seeking approvals to the property, with what I believe was an office building at the time. This board granted a variance to permit the applicant to build within 10 feet of the slopes greater than 15%. The next variance, Town Code Section 322-19E, is an elephant, environmentally sensitive land. A variance is requested to allow alteration of the environmentally sensitive lands, steep slopes greater than 15%. Mr. Chairman, this is the same variance that was granted by this board on November 29th of 2006 for the previous applicant on this particular property. The board granted the applicant a variance to allow an alteration of lands greater than 15%. The next variance, Town Code Section 322-20B, as in boy, residential district setback, 50 feet permitted, 2.5 feet proposed. The building itself would be over the 63 feet, 63 feet from any property owned by a resident. A portion of the property owned by the applicant is zoned residential in the rear of the parcel and affects the permitted setback. So, Mr. Chairman, we would submit that this parcel is unique because of its own nature. The R21 district runs through the middle of the parcel as indicated on the site plan, and therefore this variance is required due to the nature of it being split zone. The proposed building complies with the setback requirement from a residential district owned by a different property owner. The proposed building is over 63 feet from a residential property where the setback is 50 feet. And this board granted a variance to the previous applicant for this property in November 29th of 2006 to reduce the building setback from 50 to 5 feet due to the nature of the property. And the last bulk requirement variance is Town Code Section 322-20, C as in cat, residential district buffer, required buffer screen of 6 feet of a 6-foot fence and a 10-foot wide protective planting strip, none proposed. And that's because of the steep grade change over the 25% slope, Mr. Chairman. This property has a natural buffer screen comprised of the steep slopes, which are heavily treed. And as outlined in the appraisal report of Mr. John Breslin, this variance will be approved, should be approved because there will be an extensive natural buffer due to the steep grade change and the dense vegetation at the rear of the property. And next, I'm going to go through the parking variances and then the signage variances. And then we have some experts with us here tonight in support of the application. The first parking variance, Mr. Chairman, is Town Code Section 322-62, minimum parking, 100 spaces required. As provided in the traffic study that was prepared by our traffic engineer, Mr. Osmond Barry, PE, of Nelson and Pope, this location will require parking spaces for approximately 3 to 5 vehicles during peak utilization. The 13 spaces provided will be more than sufficient to accommodate all vehicles, even during peak hours. And this board, approved a 30-spot reduction in parking for the St. James Mini Storage Warehouse on September 27th of 2000. This board also granted a 147-spot reduction for parking for 22 spots where 169 stalls were required for Safeguard Properties Mini Storage Warehouse in January of this year. The Safeguard Mini Storage Warehouse located in St. James was granted a variance for 1 spot per 3,750 square feet of gross floor area, whereas here, the applicant is requesting a variance to permit 1 parking stall per 3,846 feet. So the requested variance is substantially similar to the variance requested and received by Safeguard in January of this year, and I would submit is substantially less. The next variance relates to loading spaces for trucks is Section 322-63. It requires 1 per 40,000 square feet berth size for a loading stall. However, this variance should be granted because the loading dock is for a mini storage warehouse, which is far different than a loading dock for a trucking terminal, which this regulation contemplates. There will be no large trucks or tractor trailers at this location whatsoever, and the loading docks will only be used for the short term for customers who need to load and unload their vehicles and access the elevator. We submit that this board should grant the variance as this loading spot is not meant for large trucks. The last variance related to parking is 322-65, 25 feet required, 8 feet 3 inches proposed. As you can see, Mr. Chairman, an aerial view, if Mr. Donadio could go back to that, this portion of Jericho Turnpike shows that almost all the commercial properties on the south side of Jericho will have little or no parking setback. This is due to the nature of the properties and the steep slopes on the south side of Jericho Turnpike. Without the ability to build deeper into the lot, the parking must be at the front of the parcel and closer to the street. However, this variance will not impact the surrounding area as it is standard to have little to no parking setback in this area on Jericho Turnpike. And the last 2 variances relate to the signage. Town Code Section 322-69, sub C, sub 1, 1 wall sign permitted, 3 wall signs proposed, and allow 3 wall signs that do not face a public street. In this case, there are no signs on the sides of the building due to the nature of the lot. Neither the west side nor the east side have any signage whatsoever. So 1 sign is proposed on the front facade of the building, and 2 are proposed on what the architect calls the blade of the building, which is that silverish type material that's on the left-hand side of the image that you're looking at and that I'm looking at on my screen. So what Safeguard proposed was, rather than putting signage on the east and west side, which wouldn't be visible at all, that they put the signage on either side of the blade. This way, motorists on Jericho Turnpike headed eastbound or westbound could see it without any problem. We submit that the signs will not interfere with the surrounding area and is no different than the other street frontages on this portion of Jericho Turnpike. Several parcels in the area have multiple buildings on one parcel, with each building having its own sign. Here, a single building is proposed with 3 signs, and we submit that even though a single building is proposed, 3 wall signs facing Jericho Turnpike does not alter the nature of the area. And that the fact that this board granted a variance for simply self-storage on Old Willets Path, not far from here, to have 5 wall signs where 1 is permitted. And we submit that our proposed 3 wall signs is far less than the 5 wall signs granted by simply self-storage on February 28th of 2018. And the last wall sign is Town Code Section 322-69A, wall sign height, 15 feet permitted, 21 and 25 feet proposed respectively. These variances are due to the nature of the proposed building, and we would submit that decreasing the wall signs to 15 feet would look disproportionate. The 21-foot and 25-foot wall signs will look proportional and aesthetically pleasing to the eye. In addition, this board granted variances for 3 wall signs to simply self-storage on Old Willets Path on February 28th of 2018. And that was for wall signs to be 27 feet in height, where the maximum was 15. And we submit that the variance for the wall signs of 21 and 25 feet in height are similar to the variances approved for that application. So what I did, Mr. Chairman, for your convenience, we provided the board in our submission letter today to the planning department a chart of the prior precedent and the variances supported by same. So in particular, we would say that this application is very similar to the recent Safeguard St. James, which, funny enough, Mr. Tremarco represented the seller, and I believe Mr. Tremarco is here to speak in a little bit about this application. So the chart really summarizes all of the variants that we're asking for and the precedent that supports these very same variances that are being requested herein. So with me tonight to present testimony in support of the application, we have the following individuals: Mr. Stanley Bonilla, Senior Vice President of Development of Safeguard Self-Storage. Next, we have Mr. Chris, I'm going to butcher your name, Michalik of SGW Engineering, the project engineer. Next, we have Mr. Osmond Barry of Nelson & Pope, our traffic safety expert. And last, we have Mr. John Breslin of Breslin Appraisal Co., our professional real estate appraiser. That concludes our overview. And with that, we'd like to call our first witness, Mr. Stanley Bonilla. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, board. I want to thank you very much for hearing our presentation today. I think Keith went over exactly what we're looking for and looking at. We're very excited about this project. We've met with staff on several occasions. We've gone through several iterations.
Excuse me, Sam, for 1 minute. Could you state your name, spell your last name so we get it correct on the record, please, and give your address?
It is Stanley Bonilla, B-O-N-I-L-L-A, Senior Vice President of Development for Safeguard Self-Storage, located at 1522 Old Country Road, Plainview, New York.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to get everything on the record correct.
Thank you very much. So as I was saying, the plan itself, we sat down with staff. This is actually Plan K that we've gone through. We've gone from multi-stories to making it single story with a basement, trying to make it fit as best we can within the parameters of the FAR. And actually, this plan is very close to the plan that staff had drawn up and suggested to us. We took that plan, put our use on top of it, and this is what we came up with. And then the look and feel of the building, we tried to make it look just like our property in St. James. And again, I see Mr. Tremarco is here also. He was actually the seller for, represented the seller for St. James. And that contract, interestingly enough, like this one, was predicated on the approval of the zoning board. So as Keith said, I don't want to belabor the point, and I'll pass it on to Osmond and be here to answer any questions you have. But this plan is substantially similar to what we did in St. James, less the large amount of land in the back, which we sanitize for not using for future use. But the effect to the residential parcel in the back is actually less than what was at St. James. St. James, we had some neighbors to the north of us that would be able to see our building. Here, the residential neighbors would not. With that, I'm going to pass the baton back to Keith. And again, Chris is here to answer any questions that you may have on the design. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Next, we're going to call Mr. Osmond, our professional traffic engineer.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members.
Again, sir, before you start, state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the record, please, sir.
My name is Osman, O-S-M-A-N, last name Barry, B-A-R-R-I-E, with offices at Nelson and Pope at 70 Maxis Road in Melville.
Right, thank you.
Nelson and Pope was retained to conduct a traffic and parking assessment for the proposed project, located at 1036A West Jericho Turnpike in Smithtown. The purpose of the study was to conduct traffic and parking analysis to determine any traffic and parking issues associated with the proposed projects. In order to determine traffic impacts that will be associated with the project, traffic data collected on West Jericho Turnpike in the vicinity of the site and trip generation estimate for the self-storage facility prepared using data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual were reviewed and compared. Upon review of the data, it can be seen that the proposed project will generate 5 trips during the AM peak hour, 8 trips during the PM peak hour, and 15 trips during the Saturday peak hour. This will amount to a 0.3% increase in traffic in the AM, a 0.3% increase in traffic in the PM, and a 0.9% increase in traffic on Saturdays. From the review of the data, it can be seen that the increase in traffic on West Jericho Turnpike due to the proposed project is 0.9% or less. The percent increase in traffic calculated is low and should not significantly impact the operations of the roadways adjoining the site and in the surrounding area. And the proposed use is a low traffic generator. Traffic analysis were also conducted at the proposed intersection of West Jericho Turnpike and the side driveway during the AM, PM, and Saturday midday peak hours with the construction of the proposed project. The results show that the intersection will operate at acceptable level of service after the construction of the project. As you can see, access to the site will be provided by a full movement driveway on West Jericho Turnpike, and the site provides 90-degree parking spaces with a 24-foot parking aisle that allows for two-way traffic. The driveway and parking layout provide for safe traffic flow and proper on-site circulation. To support the proposed self-storage facility, a total of 13 parking spaces are provided. Based on the town code, a total of 100 parking spaces are required, hence requiring a parking relief for 87 parking spaces. To support the adequacy of the parking provided, parking studies were conducted at similar self-storage, safeguard self-storage facilities, and parking data obtained from the Institute of Transportation Engineers parking generation manual were also looked at. The ITE shows a peak parking rate of 0.1 space per 1,000 square feet, resulting in a peak parking demand of 5 spaces only for this site, for this project. And based on the data from the similar facilities, the parking rate was 0.06 space per 1,000 square feet, resulting in a peak parking demand of only 3 parking spaces required for this kind of project. Therefore, the 13 parking spaces provided exceed the peak parking demand of 3 parking spaces based on the counts and 5 parking spaces based on ITE. It is therefore our professional opinion that the construction of the proposed self-storage facility will not result in any adverse traffic impacts in the study area, and the 13 parking spaces provided are adequate to support the parking demand of the proposed self-storage facility. That concludes my presentation, and I will gladly answer any questions the board might have.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now we have Mr. John Breslin.
Okay. Mr. Breslin? Mr. Breslin, if you could do the same, please. State your name, spell your last name, give your address for the record, sir.
Get off on mute. Good evening, John Breslin, 44 Elm Street, Huntington, New York. I was requested by the applicant to study this proposal and to get an opinion with respect to its impacts on surrounding real property values. And in doing that, I was provided the application materials. I, of course, visited the property in the neighborhood that it is situated in. I also was involved in the other safeguard project in St. James, so I was familiar with that application. And I've also visited some other safeguard facilities to get a firsthand feel for the way they carry out their operations. Mr. Brown went into a lot of detail about the nature of the variances that were being sought. And I think he gave some great information about the variances and why he felt that they should be granted. With respect to many of them, I think they're form over substance created by the nature of the split zone and the hill in the back of the property. What the hill provides, though, I think from my point of view, is a natural separation between the business uses along Jericho Turnpike and the residential properties to the south. This line of demarcation existed long between the zone, before the zoning was created. The hillside and the slope and the trees provide the real separation between the business uses on Jericho and the residential uses up above. There's a very significant grade change between the developed portion of the commercial properties on Jericho Turnpike and the residences above. In the report that I submitted, what I did to give you, for those of you who may not be aware of it or have seen it recently, what I did is I went to the property. The subject property itself is very, very densely covered with trees. So you can't get a feel for it from the subject. But if you go to the properties to the east and west, for example, the dentist's office in the building that's behind it, and Mr. Trimarco's office to the west, if you go to the back of those properties and then you look up, you get a real feel for the nature of the hill and the dense coverage that exists on the side of the hill going up to the residences behind it. So in the materials that I gave you, I took pictures from the back of those two properties, looking back at the subject property so that you can see the rear heavily, densely forested areas on top of the hill. And that portion of it will remain, providing that natural point of separation between the subject and the houses beyond it. The use itself along Jericho Turnpike will be completely in character with the development pattern of the commercial properties along Jericho Turnpike. It's where you would expect this type of use today to exist. As the board is no doubt aware, the demand for storage is something that has grown quite precipitously over the last 15 to 20 years throughout Long Island. These facilities provide a service that benefits both the residential and commercial users in the community. The companies will tell you that their users are in close proximity to the facilities, and the demand is still very, very strong for these types of facilities. They are a very low intensity type of commercial use. There's not a lot of activity as evidenced by the statistics provided in Mr. Barry's report. They provide significant revenue from a tax point of view without a lot of demand on services, which is a very positive development for municipalities who are always looking to maintain tax base. This type of use is ideal for that. And this particular design as we're looking at the rendering fits in well with the streetscape along Jericho Turnpike. In certain other situations, the buildings are much taller. That's not the case here. So it does fit in well with the streetscape. One of the other variances being sought is for the parking in the front along Jericho Turnpike. As Mr. Brown pointed out, which I think is quite evident from the aerial, because of the configuration of the hillside and the buildings along the south side of Jericho Turnpike, the parking in front of the buildings in close proximity to Jericho is a condition that exists along the south side of Jericho and in many cases along the north side of Jericho, because it has similar topographical conditions on that side as well. So by having the parking close to Jericho, that's a condition that exists along both sides of Jericho, and allowing it here would be consistent with the development pattern. So in my opinion, by granting the reliefs necessary, in this case, it's not going to have an adverse impact on real property values. It's not going to change or alter the pattern of development, and all of the requisite municipal services are available to the property. And I will be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Breslin.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation, Mr. Brown?
It does, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add just a couple of minor things. I did, if you're looking, first of all, at the page in front of you on A203, you could see both to the east and the property to the west on that aerial, and you could see how the setbacks of the buildings and the new building are very similar, just to expand upon Mr. Breslin's point. I also had the benefit today of reaching out and speaking to Mr. Tremarco, and I also spoke to the attorney for the dentist just to the east. I sent them both a copy of the landscape plan as well as some of the other documents that they requested. And one thing that the attorney for the family dentistry brought up was the fact of the location of their pylon sign vis-a-vis the safeguard pylon sign. And I reached out to my client and spoke to him about the possibility if the planning department saw fit to ask us to move our pylon sign, we'd be happy to do so. And I think we could really accommodate that pylon sign further to the west so as to keep the visibility for the family dentistry the way it is today. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
I have one question. How many employees at this facility at any one time?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Bonilla. Stan?
We'll have 2 to 3 employees. I'm sorry, 1 to 2 employees at the facility, depending on demand. Typically, it will be 1 throughout the day, but there will be 2 when demand increases, for instance, on weekends or overlap.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just a couple of comments for the board. The first being that planning has reviewed the application, and just 2 comments for you with respect to the building and the signage. Number 1, the facade of the building, planning would recommend that the board take into consideration that the architecture of the building should meet the requirements under 322.30.1 for mini storage warehouses, whereby all architectural finish colors and finishes would be of earth tone colors, so that we certainly would not recommend, yellows, reds, purples, anything of that color. And the second second point we'd like to make regarding the ground sign, the pylon sign. As the board is aware, over the past couple of years, the town has been moving away from pylon signs, and we have been recommending to improve the aesthetic quality of signage in all areas of town, that monument-style ground signs be installed on commercial sites. So instead of having that tall pole that's 10 to 12 feet tall with the sign at the top, we would have a nice decorative masonry base that was 2 to 3 feet tall above the ground that the sign would sit on top of, reducing the overall height of the sign from 12 to 15 feet to 7 or 8 feet. And that is it.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to be heard on this application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's a Rose Cosarano.
Okay.
Hi, that's my wife, James Cosarano. We reside at 17, but can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you just state your name, spell your last name, and give the address so we can get it right, please, for the record?
My name is James Cosarano. That's Causarano, and I reside at 17 Bayberry Lane in Smithtown, New York, 11787. We are adjacent to the back of the buffer. I just feel that this would violate and be a detriment to the area variance considerations. I think number 1 and 4, I think more than half of them, it's 12 variants being sought here. At least half of them violate number 2 and 4, and there's a handful for the 5th. I feel that by reducing the setback to the residential district from 50 to 2 is essentially eliminating it. And then by eliminating the required buffer screen and the fence, would definitely, reduce the character of the neighboring properties, be a detriment to, the residences, not just the residentially zoned property, but the actual residences that abut this property. I feel that they are almost all substantial. I agree that the parking, the traffic wouldn't change, but the parking, that's a substantial reduction from 100 to 13. They want to max out this building and then reduce its, parking. I just feel that it's going to be a noisy blight on our neighborhood. I have 2 questions regarding the operation, if I can.
Certainly.
What, with regard to the trucks, I know you said the loading dock isn't meant for large trucks. Are you restricting the size truck your customer can utilize at your facility?
What we'll do, Gary, just ask your questions. We'll jot them down.
Sure.
And if anybody else has any questions, we'll get those all on the record, and then we'll bring back Mr. Brown to answer them.
Sure thing. And then what would be the hours of operation? Do they restrict the hours, or is it at all hours? There's already a noise issue from Jericho that I experienced nightly, from those commercial properties. We have, it's a residential neighborhood. I don't have to tell you. There's kids, there's elderly, there's everybody works from home now, so we're just on top of this 24/7. Like I said, I don't see how reducing, essentially eliminating the buffer and then building next to environmentally sensitive land would not, be a detriment. I'm not only a resident, but I'm a professional that practices in the state of New York. I'm a professional civil engineer. I wouldn't propose a project like this on top of somebody's house. I just wouldn't. Maybe that's That's all I have.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there's a Gary Doria.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. First, my name is Gary Doria. I'm at 15 Bayberry Lane. We are the property that is directly behind the building that's being proposed. I have several questions and comments. First of all, I agree with almost everything that Jim has said before us, but the question about hours, I don't know if anyone's answered that. Will this be a 24/7 building? Will people be allowed to enter this building at any hour of the night? Does anyone?
We're going to ask.
Okay. Has anyone done a noise survey to find out what kind of noise, the additional noise this is going to generate, once operational? As Jim mentioned already, there is a lot of noise coming from Jericho Turnpike. You want to eliminate the setback to 2 feet, and then you have a request not to fill it in with any walls or buffers, which I don't know if there is any existing precedent for that. I believe all the other buildings that were put up on Jericho Turnpike had walls put up and had additional shrubbery planted to cover that. I think by eliminating or allowing the building to be set back that far will increase the noise. My backyard sits directly behind that. The noise will be increased if you're going to eliminate some of the geography behind us, and especially without putting any buffers behind that. I think that's, that was severely impacted. Third of all, that in generation will severely impact, some of the things that you said earlier on when you opened up the project with 1, 2, I think 4 and 5 are the ones I looked at. But, you're going to severely impact property lines or property value without having additional buffers put in place. So eliminating a setback to 2 feet is, I think, ridiculous. Without having buffers put in, I think is, another thing that is ridiculous. If they're going into the slope, I don't see on the graph that you have here, I don't see if there's going to be any retaining walls behind the building. I just see direct building that's going to be 2 feet from, don't know where or how high that slope is where the building is going to be. I don't have any indication of how high the building is going to be and how high that flag is going to sit up in front of it. What's the height there required? We're worried about erosion once that building is put in, if they're digging into the existing side of the hill. As we have storms and we have rain and that starts to erode, that can, without proper retaining walls, can erode the shrubbery and the hill behind us, which is closer to our house. Yeah, and part of that hill is still our property. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, Gary, thank you. Anyone else that wants to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, Vincent Tremarco.
Vincent Tremarco here.
Vinny, you're on.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I think the building is beautiful. The design is great. I have no objection to the way the building looks, but I do have serious concerns about the amount of parking. 13 cars, when I believe the representative of Safeguard said either 2 or 3 people will be working there. Where are they going to put their cars? Hopefully not on my lot or Dr. Lavorato's lot on the other side. So I don't think 13 cars is a sufficient amount of parking for the project. If you take away those 3 or 2 people that are going to be working there all the time, you know, you're left with 10 or 11 parking spaces, depending upon how how many people come in. So my main concern is the parking, and they did mention the other safeguard in St. James, and yes, I did represent the seller, so I didn't really have any issues with that project. That was up to the people in that area. But if you think about another comparison, which I happen to do, Gasburn LLC, it went from...
Mr. Tramarko, could you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't catch the last couple of things that you said, Mr.
Okay.
Trimarco.
I think the representative of Safeguard indicated that I represented the seller in that matter, and I said, yes, I did. And of course, you know, our concern was to sell the property, and it was Safeguard's position to get the variances, so we didn't interfere with that at all. But that comparison, there's another comparison that I think the board should make, and that was Gasburn, which the board decided November 12th, 2020. That was one that I did. That was from 172 spaces to 54 spaces. It was a 69% reduction, or 31% of the required parking. The application tonight is really 13%, 100 required, 13% provided. And again, we're not counting those 2 or 3 people who may be working there. It's a 93% reduction. So the fear that I have is they're going to be using, of necessity, the people that visit the Safeguard facility are going to be of necessity parking in my parking lot, or parking in the dentist's parking lot. And that's the real concern, you know, that I have. I certainly don't think that it's a detriment to the area. It's a beautiful building. But I think we all have to think hard about the amount of parking spaces. And given the fact that Gasburn was just granted November 12th, 2020, and they were required a substantially more parking than this application, or even Safeguard. The other thing that I'd like to also indicate is my experience with being next door to a very busy facility. I had that with my old building, which is one building over. And I really don't want to get into situations where I'm arguing with the operators of Safeguard. So I think the answer to it is simple: reduce the size of the building and make more parking. It's a simple situation. 13 cars, when you take away 2 or 3, and we don't really know how many people are going to be visiting this property, checking it out, bringing stuff in and out. It really is a substantial reduction. So that's my only concern. I think, again, the building is a beautiful building, and we all wish them luck. It'll certainly be a credit to the area. But again, I think Safeguard's got to think about its neighbors also and maybe reduce the size of the building and give us some more parking. About the signs, I don't know. I don't know of any of our buildings along Jericho that have 3 signs. But it's not a major issue with myself. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tramarko. Is there anyone else that'd like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, there's a John Rossi.
Good evening, folks. My name is Christine Rossi, ROSSI. I reside at 11 Bayberry Lane, Smithtown, New York, 11787. We are also affected by a back portion of our property that is right behind this project. One of my main concerns is the setback from 50 feet to 2 feet. We really don't need to have a commercial building of this floor plan right up against our backyards. The footprint of this building does not stay consistent with what's on Jericho Turnpike now. And just nothing is as big for their property footprint as this building is. And I also have a question about lighting. How is this building going to be illuminated at night? Will we have to look over our fences and see bright lights on a building 24 hours a day? I just don't feel that this building and the footprint that exists right now is consistent of what's on Jericho Turnpike and what's within our neighborhood.
Okay, fine. Anything else?
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman, there's a hand up for Rose Corsorano. I didn't know if it's somebody else from the same household.
Yeah, hi, this is James Corsorano again. We just wanted to add that keep mentioning this slope that buffers the residents. The slope is it's not a hill, it's a constant slope up that we can see down into the property. So, there's no hill that separates us. It's we might as well be on the same plane because it's just a constant slope. So I just wanted to iterate that because it seemed like they said where there's a hill that separates us. Yes, there's an elevation change, but like I said, we can still see down into this property. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I know your policy is usually that everyone speaks once. I'm seeing a hand up again from Gary Doria.
Apologize, Mr. Chairman, but other things.
Quickly, Gary.
I'll be quick. We talked about noise a little bit, but looking at the screenshot that you have up right now, it looks like I'm trying to determine if those are air conditioners on top of the building in 4 corners of the building. If those are air conditioners in the corner of the building and they're going to be running 24/7, I'm sure we need to worry about the noise that those are going to generate in the middle of the night when it's very quiet here and us listening to humming all night long as that happens. So I think that, again, looking at a noise assessment probably would be a good thing to have.
All right, thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see any more hands up.
Okay, I am going to bring back Mr. Brown to answer your concerns. Once he answers your concerns, we are going to close the application. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, we're not going to bring all of the experts back. We just kind of outline. I'm going to address some of the points, and then Mr. Bonilla is going to address some of them. And then Mr. Breslin wanted to speak about the buffering that occurs naturally from the change in topography. But I do want to start with that and say that the entire corridor of West Jericho Turnpike in this vicinity, spanning almost from Mayfair Terrace down to Bridge Branch Road, is zoned WSI. And it's almost a valley where the entire south side of the property, which is sloped upward to a ridge is the residentially zoned R21. In terms of visibility, I agree with the one resident that was saying that they would have to look down in order to see the building. And if Mr. Donadio is available, if he has the capability of going to Street View, I'm doing it on my computer, but when you look at the street view of Mr. Tremarco's building, where he has his sign at 1038 and there's the paneling on the side, essentially that's 2 stories tall. And when you look at the image of A2-03, Mr. Tremarco's building is visible right in the upper right-hand side of detail 2, where it says looking southwest on West Jericho Turnpike. So if Mr. Donadio can go to that image, I just want to point this out to the board. So here you have just west, and you have the closest portion of Mr. Tremarco's building that'll be adjacent to the new building. And now if you look at the elevation that our architect did at A203, you can see the height of the building. Just wait for Mr. Donadio to pull that up. Mr. Bonilla is pointing it out from his office.
Keith, if I may answer a couple of these questions also.
Yeah, sure.
As you're looking here, we'll start with this. The height of the building here, the question was how high will it be? It's being shown at 24 feet. And that 24 feet is not from the back of the property, but from the front of the property. There's a over a 30-foot gradient difference from the rear of the property to where we are. And as one of the neighbors had mentioned, that gradient continues beyond the property line.
Excuse me. Stan, excuse me a second. Please, could you go to, it looks like slide 8? Yes. So right there, I just want to point out to the board, Stan, this on the right-hand side, that paneling is the same paneling that's Mr. Tremarco's building. So you can see the safeguard building is either equal in height or maybe slightly below it. It's kind of hard to see, but the point is that they're very similar height. And just to the west of Mr. Tremarco's building is a house that's converted, that the peak of the ridge of that house is actually even higher than Mr. Tremarco's building.
Okay.
So this will not be the tallest building in the vicinity.
All right. What's the height? What's the height of the building? That was the question.
24 feet to the top of the parapet, 22 feet to the top of the roof.
Okay.
And please note that is from the finished floor, which is at the front of the building, not the rear of the building. The rear of the building will be much shorter.
Okay. Hours of operation.
8 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
8 to 5. What about the weekends?
Weekends similar, depending on demand, possibly 6 o'clock.
Weekend 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock also. With regard to the hours of operations, with regard to the number of employees there, that was brought up. It's three employees total, one at a time. We'll have one employee here at a time. With regard to truck restrictions, we do not allow tractor trailers. The largest trucks we have coming here are 13-foot box trucks, but the typical vehicle that visits is an SUV or a sedan. People aren't coming here when they drop off the material. Sometimes they'll bring the truck, but the rest of the time they'll bring some smaller vehicles. The comment was, the concern from our neighbor, Mr. Tramarko, was that we would have overflow parking, and I would ask you to take a look at the traffic parking report that we prepared. My own gate studies show of all of my Long Island stores, and this would be by far my smallest Long Island store, under 50,000 square feet, where most of our stores on Long Island average about 80 to 100,000 square feet.
Okay.
Our average visit per hour is less than 3 cars per hour. It's about 2.2 cars on average. Our peak of all of our stores on Long Island, and mind you that they're 90% full and over 80,000 square feet, where this is half that size. The largest number of cars we have at any one given hour is 10 cars in an hour. And of those 10 cars an hour, the typical stay is 15 minutes. So of our 80 stores that we currently operate nationwide, the one problem that we don't have is with traffic. We just did we're working on another property in Suffolk County next to a cemetery, and the fact was brought up by actually the staff at that hearing that the only use that is less intensive than our use is a cemetery. So people coming, the concern of people coming in the middle of the night, making lots of noise, that's not who this user is. Other uses that can be here, retail uses that will be open. You do a coffee shop that could be open all night long and have cars coming in and out all night long. We will not see that here.
I just want to point the board's attention to Table 8 and Table 9 contained in Mr. Barry's traffic report.
One of the big items that continued to come up were the setbacks, and I just want to be very clear about the setbacks here, and I have the board here and you have it there. The 2-foot setback from the residential is not from the residential property. It's from a superimposed residential line that splits our property in half. The actual distance from the closest residential line is over 60 feet. So we're beyond that setback from that area. We'll be down about 10, the roof will be down about 10 feet below where this is. And the comment was made that we won't have a buffer along this line. The reason we asked for the relief of the buffer along this line, the code calls for a fence along this line with trees planted. We already have trees planted because it's already a very highly wooded area. And a fence along this line would not even be seen from up here because of the trees from that 60-foot setback that's already in existence. So we just thought that it would be a lot of extra use. With regard to the HVAC systems, we could put them on the ground throughout to reduce that noise, but they would also, if they are on the roof, we would have noise dampers to minimize that sound. And remember, it's already 10 feet below up here, and you already have thick woods up here, thick wooded area that would also continue to dampen that sound. Question was asked about lights. There will be no lights in the rear of the building. The lights will be in the front of the building and will be contained to the property to avoid overspill. That's our standard design there, I think.
The AC units, do they run 24/7?
No, not necessarily. And they are not to keep the building at a residential climate. It would be to keep the buildings under 80 degrees in the summer and above 55 degrees in the winter. Otherwise, they're not on.
Okay, thank you.
The retaining wall question was asked about the retaining wall. We have several properties that are similar to this that are built into a slope, and we have designed the rear wall of the building as a retaining wall, so it will act as a retaining wall. It's very important to us, obviously. We don't want that for our neighbors or for ourselves for that to come down. This wall will be acting as a retaining wall, very similar. Mr. Jamarco, right next to us, has retaining walls as well. A number of these properties down the street have retaining walls. The difference is that the retaining wall will be part of our foundation.
All right. I think a question was asked about property value.
I'll defer to Mr. Breslin for that.
Don, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think the confusion with respect to the property values and the impact had a lot to do with the buffer. There was clearly a misunderstanding about where the building was going to be located and the buffer. And I think Mr. Bonilla just cleared that up. I think there was a misunderstanding that the building would be 2 feet from the property line. And he indicated it will be 60 feet or more from the property line. And I think the denseness of the woods plus the elevation change provides that necessary separation that mitigates any impacts on the residential community above it. As I pointed out earlier, I took photographs from the back of both the dentist property and Mr. Trimarco's building, looking up towards the south to the hillside. And I think what I didn't realize till I was just looking at the aerials and at the building now, that those photographs, when you look at them, and I suggest that you do look at them on my report, you will note that those photographs are taken at a point that's behind where the subject building will be located. So when you're looking at that photograph, looking in the case for Mr. Trimarco's looking east to the back of the subject property and the dentist looking west, that's the hillside area and the trees that will remain, so that you will get a clear picture of the nature of the buffer, the real buffer that it will exist between the two properties. And so I think there was clearly just a misunderstanding of what will exist, which is understandable because the language in the call of the meeting would lead one to think that they're reducing the buffer between the two properties right to the property line, and it's really a form over substance because it's the residential zoning line, not the property line. So that was the point that I wanted to clear up. But I think the buffer more than provides the separation between the properties and therefore it protects the residential properties. It's a common condition when you have commercial versus residential all along Jericho Turnpike, as well as all of suburban Long Island. But in this case, you have more than an adequate buffer. It's very substantial.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add to that the building itself acts as a buffer for these people, because right now there's nothing except for the trees that are there. And the ambient noise level from Jericho Turnpike is going to be louder than any operations of this facility whatsoever. So, and if I could, just Mr. Donadio brought up 2 points in the beginning in terms of the earth tones, which my client and I will address with planning. In terms of the monument sign, I did speak to them offline. They're not averse to replacing the pylon sign with the monument sign as Mr. Donadio described.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
You.
Thank you.
Is it over?
Then we have one more.
One more.
We have one more case.
Excuse me.
The next case on the agenda, case number 1-18378, Richard Breitstein, 24 Dehan Street, Smithtown. The location of the property, the southeast corner of Dehan Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 19 feet on St. Nicholas Avenue for an existing 381 square foot porch, to reduce the minimum rear yard from 35 feet to 29 feet and the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 3 feet for an existing 296 square foot addition.
Good evening. I think it's yours, Mr. Tramarko?
Yes, it is. Am I off mute?
Yes, you're off.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is
Mr. Trimarco, we can't hear you. You have to stay by your microphone.
Okay. I said, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tramarco. I represent the applicant. We've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to the planning department. The case is carried under the name of, but actually the property was transferred to Catrice Floyd, who is the present owner. And as you could see, she's on the screen, as well as myself. So initially, I'd like to go back to a letter that I sent to the board on October 13th, 2020. And basically, we talked about this Mr. Brightstein, who bought this property at a foreclosure sale. And we indicated in that letter that it was a zombie house. In other words, it had been neglected, it had been empty for a number of years. And it certainly did have a significant impact on the neighborhood and the entire area as a whole. I think when you have a vacant and deteriorating house for a number of years, it's certainly a blight on the area. But in any event, when you buy at a foreclosure sale, and I think it was Mr. Tanzi that touched upon this, you don't get a choice about what you can buy and what conditions you buy. You buy it the way it is, as it is, where it is. And if you don't, and if you try to negotiate with the bank, they just move along to someone else. I guess the alternative would have been for Brightstein not to buy the house, and maybe it would still be a zombie house. I don't know. So any event, he bought the house and he fixed up the house. And that's an important thing that I think we all should think about. You know, sometimes people look at, they're commonly known as flippers, and you know, they're in this business to make money, which is true. And we still live in a capitalist society, but they also provide a service to I believe, the community as a whole. And the only way a flipper can buy a piece of property from a bank in foreclosure or after they foreclose was, as I said, as is, where is. So that was the situation that Mr. Brightstein bought the property. And again, I think it was a service to the community, even though he attempts to make money and do this as a business. Also the result is the community gets a house that's fixed up and eventually sold to a new member of the community who will now take care of the house, and that's Mrs. Floyd, and will be paying taxes and maintaining a house that for many years, again, was a zombie house. Now, Mrs. Floyd nor Mr. Brightstein created the problem with the 3-foot side yard. This was created some years before, and the work was not done by anyone who we know was a former owner. So the other alternative, as I said in that letter, was, okay, we'll knock down the house and we'll build a new house. That cost, including the property value and the building of the house, would have brought a new house up to to 750,000 minimum. And we think it would have outpriced the market and certainly would have outpriced Mrs. Catrice Floyd to buy this property. And it's the area doesn't warrant that kind of a new house in any event. So really, that wasn't an economically feasible thing to do. So what did we do? Mrs. Floyd bought the house, and it was sold by Mr. Breitstein to Mrs. Floyd for $530,000. That made sense for everybody. And did the flipper, Mr. Breitstein, make money? Yes, he did. I don't know how much, but it kept the house in a price range that was commensurate with the area and allowed a person to buy this house and improve it and pay the taxes on it and maintain it, which it wasn't maintained for many years in the past. Now, one of the things I did was to say to the board, and I just have to find the file, that I would try and show some of the board members who were concerned about, was this ever done before, as far as variance considerations and setbacks. And with a lot of research being done, we found the following, and I'll try and go as fast as I can, but I do want to put these in an exhibit form, which earlier today we sent to Matt those decisions, which hopefully he will follow me and put them up on the board for you. The first one was case number 13871, and it was Robert Sembrook, December 11th, 2002. And he reduced the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 3 feet, same basically as what Mr. Breinstein asked for in the initial application for a variance, and we're again asking that from you today. There was a rear yard reduction from 35 to 13, but obviously that's not one of the issues that we have. I think you could also look at the survey just to assure yourself that where the property is and the extent of the variance that was granted. So moving along, I'll go to the next one, which was case number 14054, May 28th, 2003. And it was Joanne Di Tommaso. And in that case, the relevant variances were to reduce minimum side yard from 12 feet to 3 feet for an existing first floor addition. I emphasize it was existing, and I should have done that with the first one. So it was there already, and this board, some of the members are still sitting there today, granted that variance from 12 to 3 feet. So again, I bring that to the board's attention, and that's the second exhibit. And you can see the survey, which Matt is putting up on the screen right now. And you can see the closeness of the side yard. It's a very unique piece of property, but the question of the side yard, you can see, is still there. And that was an existing side yard requirement, and the board saw fit to grant that variance. And then we go to June 9th, 2004, Richard Tracy, case number 14430. And it was on 3rd Street, west of Lake Avenue. And the first request was to reduce minimum side yard from 12 to 2 feet. And that was approved by this board. And then reduce total side yards from 28 to 11 feet, which is close enough to what we're asking for. In fact, it's a little more severe. And again, you can look at the survey and it'll indicate where that side yard is. And I think it Matt or Blaze is doing it with his little hand there, and you can see how close it is to the existing house next door. And again, this was granted by this board in I believe it was, let me just check again, 2004. So I'm trying to move along as fast as I can. June 29th, 2005, Amy Giaquinto, case number 14747, south side of Maple Drive, west of St. Johnland. Variance, the pertinent variance was existing reduced side yard setback from 12 to 2 feet, and this was a proposed first floor addition. So it wasn't even there, and the board saw fit to grant it. And again, if you look at the survey, you can see it, and you can see where the 2 foot side yard variance was granted, and it was a proposed variance that the board saw fit to grant. Next, we'll go to November 13th, 2008, Tara Gainon, 32 Pineland Street, Wisconsin, and variance, I'm sorry, the case number was 15843, November 13th, 2008. Variance to reduce minimum side yard setback from 12 feet to 3 feet. This was approved to 5 feet only. Again, it was an application that was proposed, and the total side yard was from 28 to 12, and it was approved to 14 feet only. But again, this was a proposed, this wasn't one that was already existing. And you can look at the survey and it'll show you where the 3 feet was, which the board required it to be moved back 2 more feet. Finally, we have James and Andrea Lamadia, 2 Verde Street, Smithtown, southeast corner of Verde Street and St. Johnland Road, case number 15921, August 29th, 2009. Reduce the minimum front yard setback from 25 to 20, which is pretty close to what we're asking. I think we're asking for 19. Increase maximum, no, that wasn't. Reduce minimum distance from any lot line, side yard from 3 to 1 feet. And this was only for a ground level deck, but again, it was approved. Unfortunately, I don't have a survey. I couldn't find a survey for that. There were conditions on this, and it was conditions, the 491 square foot attic space shall not be converted to habitable space. And that, oh, we have one more here. Case number 16068, Edward Schneider, January 13th, 2012. And the minimum front yard was from 25 to 20. and reduce minimum side yard from 12 foot to 0. We can look at the conditions. One condition was the ridge of the garage shall be no less than 15 feet above existing grade. And there were covenants filed to ensure that. And if you take a look at the survey, you can see what was approved and where the 0 point is in this existing property. So it's not like we're coming to this board and asking for something that is new and different and not granted by the board on numerous times. And this is what we could find after a fair amount of research into the planning department's records. We know that a couple of board members were concerned about this application and the fact that it might set a precedent. I think the precedent was set. I know you're not absolutely bound by precedent, but here is a case where, and it's kind of, they're few and far between where you can say that, hey, you know, this guy that flipped the house and he, by the way, got permits for everything else. He did a good thing and he allowed somebody to buy a house that was affordable to Mrs. Floyd. Mrs. Floyd, during that time, had some serious setbacks. She did have a newborn. I saw the baby the last time we were before you, and this baby was born after her husband died. So I don't know if the board has any questions, but I think we would certainly ask the board for its favorable consideration. We don't feel that this would have an adverse effect on the character of the adjacent properties. The request is not substantial in the sense that this is something that was unavoidable either by the flipper, Mr. Breitstein, and certainly not by Mrs. Floyd, who has been in the house for a few months now and, you know, has obviously taken care of the house, paid the taxes, and is a valued member of our community. Can the benefit be achieved by an alternative? Well, that's the thing, that it really can't, because I went over the cost of knocking it down and putting up a new house. It would have just outclassed that particular neighborhood. The only alternative was to do what was done. Mrs. Floyd, again, now we have a person that is living in the house, will be taking care of the house, paying her taxes, whereas before it was a vacant and a zombie house. Were there any environmental issues? No. There's no adverse effect on the environment. It's a house like any other house in the area. The difficulty was this self-created. Well, I don't want to go into it again, but I'll just say that the only way you could buy a house in foreclosure, the only way, is buy it as is, where is. And if everybody said the same thing, I'm not buying this house, and taking a chance, then you wouldn't get these type of houses fixed up by people who are in business, yes, to make money, but again, they also do a service. There's nothing wrong with being a capitalist and at the same time helping the community and people who want to be part of the community. So I don't really think that this practical, that this difficulty was self-created in the sense of what else could we have done? So again, if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Carmine Grasso, an architect that has been helping me and Mrs. Floyd with this application. If you have any questions for him, he can talk on what it would cost to knock down that portion of the house, and I don't even know what they would do. It would make the house unlivable. So there really wasn't, you know, any alternative. So that's it, members of the board. I hope you'll find this application acceptable so we can all move on and Mrs. Catrice doesn't have to worry about the town coming over and, you know, telling her she's gonna have to knock half the house down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tramarko. Does anyone in the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No?
No.
Blaze, planning?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
No? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing any hands up.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Good night, Mr. Tramarko.
Good night, Mr. Chairman, members of board. Thank you.
And that concludes our hearing for tonight.